In fact, American tariffs are twice as high on Canada today as they were when Prime Minister Carney took office, promising to deploy his negotiating skills to get us a win. He promised he would have elbows up. He promised he could, quote, handle Trump, and that he would, quote, negotiate a win. Those are his promises, and he needs to be judged by his word. And this was not any promise, just any old promise on page 73 of his platform. It was the promise on which he ran his entire election campaign. And now he's abandoning it. So either he admits that he was wrong all along, or that he knowingly spread falsehoods to get elected. He needs to explain which of those two things it is.
Now, I don't think he's going to do either of those things. What I do think he will do, though, is use this Statistics Canada data that's come out in the second quarter of 2025, detailing that Canada has officially experienced the largest decline in exports in the history of the nation. We actually saw a trade hemorrhage at a staggering $19 billion of a deficit, which shows worsening competitiveness at a time when exports should be the absolute backbone of our recovery. You know what's really telling about this, though, is that our exports fell in the billions of dollars and our imports remained relatively the same. Kind of weird, right? Because Mark Carney said that we can be our own best customer and that we can give more than any foreign government can take away. Well, if that's true, why are we importing more? Because imports have actually risen over the years at around $65 to $70 billion, and they didn't crash the way that exports did. So we certainly didn't suddenly start supplying ourselves with all of these things. Actually, to the opposite, we've continued to import even more. And I sure hope you're still watching, because here is the mic drop that you need to tell all of your friends and family. According to this data, which is taken from 2022 to 2025 that we can see, Canada's overall trade deficit is actually driven entirely by non-U.S. trade. The U.S. market keeps us afloat, and the rest of the world is draining us. Even our U.S. surplus couldn't offset the global deficit, so the total trade balance catered. But I thought we were expanding and diversifying our trade. That's what Mark Carney told me. That's why he's been going on all of these fancy trips overseas on my dollar, is because we're diversifying. We're signing these amazing deals. Right, Melanie Joly? Isn't that why you've been doing all this stuff? But the data tells a very different story, because in reality, foreign markets are taking away Canada's wealth leaves in the form of imports as our exports shrink. The record high $19 billion trade deficit proves the complete opposite of everything they've been trying to parade through our media and through their press conferences, that foreigners are giving us goods that we're dependent on because we don't supply them for ourselves, and we're struggling to pay for them with our declining exports. Some trade deals, hey? The data actually shows that we're diversifying our trade is weak at best, and that's being generous, because exports outside of the U.S. are inconsistent, they're volatile, and completely overshadowed by the high amount of imports. So, yep, the U.S. remains the only market where Canada consistently runs a surplus, and without it, the global picture of Canada is very scary. And yet, the media and our federal government is still running on overdrive to turn us away from America, to villainize Donald Trump and Trump's tariffs. They're going to blame Trump's tariffs for this mess, I can guarantee you that. But the only thing that is actually sinking us is their response, which has been for years to isolate Canada and now to shut out our biggest partner, which is driving us straight into the ground, because obviously nobody else is reliable. And all that to say, yeah, of course, it's super important to diversify your trade. We should have been doing that years ago. We should have rescinded bad laws and policies, and we should have made sure that Canada was a competitive place so that we weren't so reliant on the United States. But they didn't do that, did they? They did the opposite. And now they're using it to their advantage to blame them, while their policies and decisions and poor diplomacy sinks us into the ground. Wake up. How much more do you need? I'm